Good evening, Canterbury. Welcome to NewsMakers, and it's a political flavour to the topics this week with a very political panel. It's a pleasure to introduce our guests, Food Safety Minister and National MP Kate Wilkinson, and Labour MP Ruth Dyson. Thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Now, have you had your folate shot today, Minister?
I've had some orange juice, so there's certainly folate in orange juice, so I'm sure I have.
And you've been into the leafy greens?
Not so far today, probably this evening. Yeah.
Right, very good. Okay, we are going to start with the issue of folate. Give us our daily bread. Should the folic acid be added to the mix? Is this mass medication?
I think, Mike, as you know, it's a difficult debate. It's been charged with emotion, and mass medication, poison, and all those sort of emotive words have come out. At the end of the day, you've got to look at the science. We rely on the science. The science says it's safe. What is hard to get across, though, is actually the process, and we're working through a process, and that's really hard to get across to New Zealanders, that it's not just as easy as sort of at the strike of a pen being able to make a decision. I've always said right along that I'm not a fan of it. We're looking for ways within our joint food regulatory system to defer the standard.
Okay. Why aren't you a fan? What are your reservations?
Well, I have reservations. One, I think that you have to be very, very careful in terms of risks and benefits when you're taking away the choice of New Zealanders. Now, there is a choice in the sense that unleavened and organic bread won't have to have folate fortified with into it. There's also compliance issues, whether under fair trading legislation the bakers cannot actually guarantee that the amount of folic acid per slice will be there. Right. And I think there are also some uncertainties as to the cumulative effect over generations of what that might do. So I still have concerns. My stance hasn't changed on that. But the process itself is so tricky. This is the first time that consideration has been given to reviewing an existing food standard. So we're breaking new territory here.
Are you concerned that the Minister is concerned about the benefits of folic acid?
I completely agree with Kate that if you're going to add something to what is part of most people's diet, then you should be really careful. And I know that New Zealand and Australia were really careful in developing this food standard. This is our food standard. It's not being done at the direction of Australia. It's not the same as theirs. We're only adding folate to bread. They're adding it to all flour. So it's quite a different standard. This is being done on the basis of best scientific information, and that's how it should be made. That's how the decision should be made. It should not be a political decision. And I'm actually really disappointed that John Key has turned it into a political debate rather than a scientific debate. And I know that Kate has tried really hard to look at the science behind this. The reason that it was decided in consultation with the bakers, with considerable work being done with all political parties in Parliament, with the paediatricians, with all sorts of members of the public, was that the bakers said don't make this a competition between different sorts of bread, it's all or nothing, make it compulsory. The best research said this is likely to save not just a number of babies being born with spina bifida, but a number of terminations of pregnancy not being made. So if we have got a chance here to stop babies being born with spina bifida, to stop parents going through the anguish of whether to have their pregnancy terminated or not, I think we should do it. And the reason it's in bread, rather than pregnant women being given it as an additive, as a vitamin extra, which is what it is because it's too late once a woman knows she's pregnant. You have to have that additional folate from the time you conceive.
And Ruth is right on that, but I think what we should be looking at too is the model that Ireland is using, and on a voluntary basis, based on what they've been doing there, they've increased the intake of folate by 30%, and it's voluntary. And so we need to look at that, and we need to look at that so that New Zealanders do have a choice. So the benefits of added folate are undisputed, and it must be a tragedy really for families to have babies who are born with spina bifida. But then, when you are looking at taking away New Zealanders' choices, you have to be very, very careful. And so we're working our way through the process. I'm working closely with the PM's office. Yeah. I've spoken with my counterpart in Australia because we have a $1.6 billion food export industry with Australia, and we take that very seriously.
Do we export bread?
I don't know if we export bread.
I know we export Girl Guide biscuits. I just found that out recently. The Girl Guide biscuits that are sold in Australia and New Zealand are all made here. It's a very good thing. So we may well export bread.
There has been this sort of sub-debate around sovereignty and food standards. Do you think New Zealand has lost part of its sovereignty over food standards with Australia?
Well, no, I don't, and I can understand why people would think that we have. What happens is that when a food standard is introduced, there is quite a robust process, albeit that the Minister didn't even have to take it to Cabinet. And this was a Labor standard that was introduced, I might add, there was the option to opt out at that stage. When you miss that window of opportunity, then it gets a bit more complicated. So, but at the time the standard, just before the standard was introduced, there is that time to opt out, and we could have opted out at that stage very easily. Once it's introduced, it becomes a bit more technical and a bit more complicated.
But it is a New Zealand standard. People are being misled about that. Kate's
so
right.
it isn't a bunch of Australians that are telling New Zealand this is what you must do?
The Australians are going to fortify their flour, so everything that has flour in it, cakes, muffins, scones, even your batter and your fish and chips, sausage rolls, everything will have folate added to it in Australia. New Zealand said, no, we didn't want to do that. We wanted bread only. And if you add folate to organic bread, it threatens the organic label. It's not that it's a problem, it just threatens the ability to say this is organic because it's had an additive put in, and unleavened bread. So that's.
And we also have it in cereals. We have folate fortified cereals by choice at the moment. Absolutely. So it's already in some ingredients. So to be honest, it's a bit emotive and scaremongering of the bakers to try and suggest it's not safe when they themselves are putting it in cereals.
Right. A couple of quick things. Why can't this review be done now, or why can't the September start date be delayed?
Okay, the review itself, I can ask the Ministerial Council, which we have a joint Ministerial Council meeting, which is the Food Safety Minister, me from here, and plus the ones from the States and Australia. And it's the Council that organised the review, authorised the review, and they authorised the Food Standards Authority of New Zealand and Australia to do it. So I can request as Minister that a review be done. The next meeting is not until October. So that's where the October date comes from. It's not. I mean, I know it sounds silly. The standard's due to come in September. Therefore, the review won't even start till October if we can get agreement. But that's the only reason, is that the Ministerial Council meeting meets twice a year, and the next meeting is October.
Would a possible compromise be something along the lines of encouraging the bakers to produce a range of folate-rich breads in addition to the general bread range? Is that a goer?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. If the bakers did a bit more to actually help educate women in particular on the benefits of folate fortification, and it's before you get pregnant, not once you get pregnant.
Sure.
If they did that, if they provided that choice, that education, and did a bit to help the situation,
and they could be doing it now.
They could be.
In Ireland, they've done it voluntarily. In America, they've had it compulsorily for over 15 years. New Zealand bakers could be doing this now with no problem at all. They said to us they wanted it made compulsory, all or nothing. That was the bakers' view.
Okay.
But we're still working our way through the process. Can I assure you, Mike, and assure your audience that we are still working our way through the process, and as I've said all along, I'm not a fan of the standard.
I'm sure Sue Kedgley will be keeping an eye on progress.
I'm sure she is.
We will take a break. Coming up, the state of the economy. Do stay with us.